This Sunday on Press Pass, former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is planning a 2026 Senate run, potentially facing current Senator Jon Husted, who was appointed by Governor DeWine. Last year, Brown lost his bid for a fourth term to Bernie Moreno by about 3.5 points. And former Valley Congressman Tim Ryan also might be stepping back into politics. A spokesperson for Ryan says he's considering a possible run for Ohio governor in 2026. So here with more on these potential candidates and their chances, we have retired professor of political science from Baldwin Wallace University, Dr. Tom Sutton, with us. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Leslie, it's good to be with you.
Well, I want to just jump into this and ask, were you surprised when you heard about this news regarding Sherrod Brown and Tim Ryan?
No, really not surprised at all. There's been a lot of speculation about former Senator Brown running either for the Senate seat again or running for governor. He is by far and away the most prominent Democrat in Ohio. The only elected statewide right now we have is Jennifer Brunner in the Supreme Court. So it doesn't surprise me at all. He's been in politics all his life, approaching 50 years, and even though he's in the early 70s, and we have a 79-year-old president, et cetera. So it doesn't surprise me at all. With Tim Ryan and his failed governor attempt a few years ago, I can certainly see him running again. And you do have Dr. Amy Acton, a declared candidate, the only one really of note on the Democratic side, who's raised 1.4 million so far for her campaign. But Ryan certainly is one with a lot more electoral experience as a member of Congress, former member of Congress, and quite frankly, Democrats need people like Brown and Ryan to be running statewide for these offices. There's really no one else that they can turn to at this point. All due respect to Dr. Acton and her campaign.
Now, Sherrod Brown would go up against Jon Husted, and as we know, he was appointed to fill the Senate seat vacated by J.D. Vance when he became vice president. Do you think the fact that Husted was appointed and not elected could give Sherrod Brown an edge in any way if he ends up becoming the challenger?
I don't think that's really going to make that much of a difference for Ohio voters because Jon Husted is a well-known figure himself. He served as lieutenant governor with Mike DeWine prior to his appointment, and before that, 8 years as Secretary of State. He was Speaker of the Ohio House, serving during his 8 years there. So he has name recognition and experience that can match Brown's. And certainly, with the state moving in the Republican direction ever since 2016, he automatically has that advantage when it comes to the likelihood that on statewide candidates that people are going to the majority are going to be voting for a Republican candidate.
And of course, Ohio voters elected Bernie Moreno over Sherrod Brown and largely went for President Trump. But we normally see the president's party lose some seats in a midterm year. Based on what we've seen from the Trump administration and Republican Congress in the first 6 months or so, do you think Ohio voters may end up swinging back to the Democrats this year or next year?
It's really going to depend on the issues that people vote on. And the primary issue in Ohio and across the country is the economy. All the concerns that now exist related to the tariffs being applied and the effect they might have on prices. When many people voted for President Trump because of inflation and their concerns about that, unemployment is also an issue potentially. So at this time next year, if those indicators are positive, then I think you'll see a much less effect on Republican candidates. However, if they go negative and people see higher inflation, things they expected to see change under President Trump, then that's going to be a negative for those Republican candidates. And historically, it is true that the party in office in the White House tends to lose seats in the midterm election, keeping in mind that Brown's loss last year was in part because Donald Trump was on the ballot and he won Ohio by 11 points.
Now, Tom, as we see situations in Texas and California play out over redrawing congressional maps, what do you think Democrats' chances look like nationwide as we approach 2026? Do you think voters opposed to many of these policies and orders will show up in force at the ballot box next year?
I think we will see higher turnout than you typically see in midterm elections. It'll probably be something like what we saw in 2018, particularly because essentially everything that Donald Trump ran on in 2024, he has done everything vigorously to implement. And some of that has raised the specter of him being more authoritarian, much more presidential power. And so I think you'll have a lot of people who consider themselves independents, maybe even Republican, who may vote against that in voting for Democrats in office. Now, with redistricting, that could have blowback in either Democratic or Republican states that are seen as trying to manipulate people's vote. It makes me think of the supermajority ballot issue we had 2 years ago on the Ohio ballot, which was soundly defeated by voters because they saw it as an attempt to rig elections in favor of one party or another. And that can be a disadvantage. Ohio will be redistricting as required by law. And of course, they're going to be targeting what they see as at least two or three Democratic swing seats, those being the seats held by Marcy Kaptur, Amelia Sykes, and Lansdowne down in the Cincinnati area.
Now, Tom, we only have a few seconds left, but I want to ask you this question. This past week we saw President Trump meet with Vladimir Putin, but no details have really been released from that summit. Now, Trump will meet with Zelensky tomorrow. Do you think the president is on an actual path toward a ceasefire or peace deal in this war?
I think he thinks he is, whether this, and certainly he's trying different approaches. There was a lot of concern about the reversal from going for a ceasefire to going for a full peace agreement that happened in the discussions in Alaska. Tomorrow will be another step, and it will take many steps for this to be resolved. And Putin has made it very clear that he wants to retain control over that eastern part of Ukraine. Getting him to change on that will be very difficult, even for President Trump.
All right, Dr. Tom Sutton, thank you so much.